Hey guys, welcome to another video from theplayersaid.com. I'm Grant. This weekend we are at WBC in Pennsylvania. Today we have the honor of meeting with Joe Chacon, designer of many great games. But today we're talking specifically about Front Toward Enemy, which is a tactical level Vietnam war game from Multiman Publishing. So maybe give us a little insight into what the game's about.
Okay, so the genesis of this for me was looking at and reading about history. I got to a point where I really wanted to play a tactical Vietnam game, and at the time, about 2011, really couldn't find anything. So I was working on another game, Operation Mercury, a GTS game from MMP, and I needed a break because drawing 5 maps, it takes a lot of time, and mentally I was exhausted. So I started fiddling around with some tactical Vietnam stuff, and eventually came up with a game, and I thought, hey, this looks like a lot of fun. I really want to play it, and put it in Basel. And my buddy from California, Pat Mulvihill, said, hey, this is actually pretty good.
Pretty good.
So when I showed it to MMP, off chance, they're like, we'll go for it. But that was, 2012, maybe even 2013. It takes a while.
7, 8 years ago.
Yeah, it
Wow.
takes a lot of time to get it refined, because then it's got to really go out for play testing, and then the artwork, and then the pre-order thing. But I'm really excited to have it published and available here at WBC.
Yeah, so this follows, it's an Army battalion.
Yep, so the level, when I was young, one of my favorite games was Firefight. And if you're familiar with that old SPI game, the units were actually fire teams and individual vehicles, and that kind of stuck with me, not only in my career decisions, but with gaming. It's something I've always loved. So when I looked at Vietnam and I started reading the history of it, I realized that once men got into combat, they clustered in little groups. I think it's just a natural thing, and I saw that very much in what I read in Vietnam. And so I said, I think a fire team is a great level. So not individual soldier, but those little groups of soldiers on the battlefield on both sides that clump together is what gives you your unit size. So you have fire teams, individual weapon teams, and then leaders who are really important on the battlefield. So
Fire teams are somewhere between 2 and 4.
2 to 4 guys, and a weapons team can be 2 to 3 soldiers, and that's what you have on the counters.
Okay. The counters, we were looking at the counters the other day. I think they're pretty interesting looking. Sure. Sometimes the guys are kneeling, sometimes they're laying down prone.
Nicholas
Scooby.
Yep, he did a great job on these, and in fact, the individual soldiers count, because when you go to really load helicopters, you can put 7 guys on a helicopter in Vietnam. Yeah. So you have to count the soldiers on the counter, and that's how you load up your helicopters.
That's great.
Even that matters a little bit.
Yeah. So we were looking at the maps. I was thinking maybe that we would recycle ASL maps. They have the same look and feel, but I think they're different.
They are. So
how are they different?
I don't own, but I remember reading and looking at Grunt, and I think Search and Destroy, 2 old SPI games that were about the same level. And I was really intrigued that they had basically an area of operations. They didn't have geomorphic maps like you have with the ASL. And so I went and I started looking at terrain in Vietnam, looking at the 1 to 50,000 maps that the soldiers actually fought on, and I found a perfect chunk of terrain that, when I sized it up, gave me about everything I wanted. So I took that and really created between the 2 maps an area of operations for the companies to operate in. Yeah. And so you have a series of 10 missions, 10 scenarios that you fight in the same terrain.
Okay.
And they don't always use the whole map. You might use a quarter of one, you might use a half, you go lengthwise, so it gives you some variation using the terrain. But in that sense, it's really an area of operations that you're working in, and it's just this little valley.
So obviously you've got some rice paddies here, you've got some villages. Hills.
Yep, it's Central Highlands terrain, so you have some very pronounced hills that are very jungle covered, but you have the little openings. There's a scenario where the Americans have to secure a hilltop LZ, and they come in and take this. There's another hilltop over here where the Americans are actually camped for the night, and in the morning they get attacked.
Ambushed,
and that one particularly, an armored cav squad platoon comes in to relieve them. So there's a lot of variation.
And the other map is...
The other map extends the battlefield further, in this case to the west, with another set of hills, a couple more villages.
Okay. So it's similar terrain, like you said, an area of operations.
Yep, it's you consider it a small Central Highlands valley that they're working in.
Okay. So have you considered maybe a future edition where you go to different types of terrain, or?
I have. So in Front Towards Enemy, you have a U.S. Army infantry company. You actually have the countermeasures for a full company, but it's never really that many guys available to go to the field. But you have it. And the same thing for the NVA. This is Central Highlands terrain, and if MMP's happy with this and they want another one, I've already got terrain and OB picked out for a Coastal Plains and a U.S. Marine Corps company, and then a main force VC company. So they're about comparable in combat power.
Okay.
If we get that far with this, besides some other things that we put in an expansion, will be the ability to swap forces between the two games.
Okay.
So you could fight the Marines in Central Highlands, which they did, and the U.S. Army company down on the Coastal Plain. The same thing with the VC and the NVA back and forth.
Right.
But we'll get through this one first.
Yeah. How long do scenarios typically play?
There's a couple of really quick learning scenarios that only take about an hour. They're very basic, though. You're learning fire maneuver and then some of the concealment aspects of the game. The longer scenarios will probably take you 2 to 3 hours.
Okay.
They tend to have a lot of turns, but I think you'll find the turns go very quickly. And
So how many counters typically are on the battlefield in these scenarios? Range, maybe?
I want to say, because you're talking lower level, you're probably talking 18 to 20 counters for each one. There's some more for the Americans. Most of the scenarios, American enter on helicopters.
Right.
So they'll all fly in on helicopters. They'll drop down, they'll unload, and then the helicopters leave.
Yeah.
So that increases a little bit. That's only to get them on the board.
Okay. So real quick, how does combat work?
So, I don't know that it's unique. The way I looked at it when I was looking is they expended a lot of ammunition, and it was really the massing of firepower that gave you effect. So the way combat works is a counter, and I don't know if you can see them. I'll pull out a couple here. A counter has a firepower rating, in this case 4 for small arms, and what you can do is basically you have to roll that firepower or less to get a hit, to get an effect.
Yep.
So the massing effect of firepower.
And this uses a 10-sider and a
10-sided die.
10-sided die.
Yep. There's a 6 included because you do have some scatter
Random stuff,
and you have to do that. So what you have here is a firepower 4 and a range of 4. So if you wanted to shoot, you would have to roll 4 or less to get a hit. If you added in another fire team, now it's a 5 or less, and another fire team is 6 or less. So what you're doing is you're massing the firepower to get up.
Yep.
There's a break point in the odds if you fired this guy to 4 or less, and this guy to 4 or less, and this guy to 4 or less on what your possibilities are.
Yeah.
So it's a massing firepower. You roll 4 or less to achieve a hit. Of course, if the enemy is in terrain, then that number goes down. Or there's a modifier to the die roll. Once you get a hit, then you end up going to a target effects table, and there's no modifiers for that. That's some would say it's straight luck, but in combat, you've already accounted for having an effect by them being in cover, or if you're tired, exhausted, or you're suppressed, or those kind of things have already taken into effect. So the luck of to being a casualty in combat is what comes out on the target effects roll, and you end up with KIAs, WIAs, suppressed or broken.
Okay. Those are the results.
Yeah.
And you roll a 10-sider on that table?
You do. It's the same thing, because mentally for me, it's really easy to think about percentages.
Yeah,
so
there
I
you
like
go.
the 10-sider. The unique thing about the casualties, if I can find one here, is when you take a casualty.
While you're looking, I'm going to show the guys these. I don't know if we can. It's going to focus in on that. Well, not really. Look at those counters. Those are just really dope. All right, just wanted to give you a look at that. Yeah, these are really nice looking counters.
So the unique thing in this case, you've got an NBA fire team with a 3 and another one over here, and they're actually bad tactics out in the open.
Yeah.
But if they were to engage this American fire team and get a hit and actually cause a WIA or KIA, being 4 men, he would flip over, and then he gets a WIA. It's really just a marker.
Okay.
And what that represents is guys are wounded and
harder to move around.
And somebody's got to transport them.
Yeah.
And the way it works is causing the casualty creates some victory points for the NBA player. And now the American's incentive is to take care of his casualties. He's got to call in a medevac and get that guy out, and then he'll get some victory points to offset it.
Okay.
At the same time, you've now got a fire team out of combat that's busy taking the wounded guy backing out.
So you're less effective with your massing of firepower there on your fire teams.
Exactly. The other mechanic is at the end of every turn, you have to roll for your WIAs.
Okay.
To see if they could return to duty. Maybe it's a light wound and they're back to duty, or fortunately they die of their wound.
Yeah.
So you have medics on the battlefield, and if you get them to a medic, the possibility of them dying of the wounds is less.
Okay.
But you continue to, there is still a chance, a 10% chance, so you want to call in that medevac. You need to get those guys off. The same thing applies for the NBA, and they can move their guys off the map or into tunnels that they get to get them out. So I think a big part of it is the impact of casualties on your ability to accomplish the mission and what you have to do to safeguard your casualties and your KIAs and recover them, because that was a very big part of the war.
So what about off-board artillery, airstrikes?
There is. So the leaders have, the leaders in this case, you have a platoon sergeant, I think, here. Oh, I'm sorry, that's a LRP leader. Well, that's fine. Or in this case, a platoon sergeant out here. And I should have probably started. The engine for the game is it's a chit pull and activation mechanic.
Right.
So you pull an American chit, and you can choose to activate a single hex, which is a fire team showing some initiative, or a single unit. You can activate a hex that has several fire teams in it, and below the level of the leadership, that's like a squad leader that's got all the guys in his 50-meter radius doing something. Or you can activate a leader, and he gets to activate everybody within 100 meters of him.
Is that his command radius?
That's his command radius.
So 4 hexes.
Yep. Well, 2 hexes from him. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Got it.
Okay. Because it's 50 meters a hex.
Okay.
The actions, of course, for the normal troops: move, fire. They can assault, they can search, but the leader has some additional actions like request artillery and request the medevacs and those kinds of things.
All right.
So that's how you would get the outboard artillery, as you put in a request. You know, you're one company operating out here, and there's other companies and the rest of the battalion.
Right.
So
it may take you a while.
You have to roll to see if the artillery is available,
There you go.
and then what the delay is. Each turn is supposed to be about 5 minutes, so you can get from an immediate response to a 50-minute delay in their
so
fire.
cool. Yeah.
Because they're busy firing for somebody else.
They're on a
They
hill
get
somewhere
here.
firing for 10 companies that are active.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and so
that's
there's
great.
A little bit. The NBA have the same thing with their leadership. They've got similar options for their leaders. Their artillery is a little less available, and generally it's more mortars.
Okay.
The other thing that adds into that, I think you asked about requesting air, is the random events. Because random things happen on the battlefield all the time, some good, some bad. One of the random events for the American is to get some Cobras on station. So they get to fly in for 3 turns and do about 15 minutes of combat, which is about normal, and then they're out.
What's their combat values?
I don't know if I can dig them out. They have a white, which is more of a dual purpose combat value with the rockets and guns.
Yeah.
And I want to say. Oh, that's a Huey. So you're counting for door guns in there.
Is it better than a Huey?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Here's again. You'll have a hard time probably seeing those air cab. Here's your Cobra.
Got it. Sorry, I didn't make you dig that out.
No, you're fine. That's your Cobra coming
there
in.
You go.
He actually, in that, he's dropped down to ground level.
Okay.
He's got that's a pretty good firepower. 50% chance to hit in a duel, which creates more casualties, and he's got a little bit of armor on him.
Yeah.
inherently they had some armor against small arms, but he's also flying a little bit
Little more
tactically, so it's a
maneuverable.
little bit harder to hit him.
And what's the +1? The black +1?
That's the armor. So that
Armor.
would, if somebody shoots at him,
Yeah.
that modifies the die roll.
So if they had to roll a 4, they have to roll a 5.
Correct.
Okay.
That modifies the die roll. Let me see what's on the back. On the back, that shows them at treetop level.
Okay.
And there's a third counter that shows them at high level. So the
Okay.
helicopters, they fly at high, treetop, and then ground level.
Wow.
Really, for the Hueys that come in, that's what they need to land and unload. So they get to move. Now, everyone's got a standard movement rate for all the infantry guys. It's about 5. It's 5. You can bump that up to 9 if you double time, but then you're exhausted and you have to recover. The helicopters all have a 20. We're not talking. If you look at the comparison map, this is about 1.5 kilometers. So a helicopter flying in is going to have a lot of movement coming in. It's not enough to traverse the whole map, so they're going to spend a couple of turns here, vulnerable, and then they've got to drop down to ground level and take the bait, take the fire.
Well, I'm going to be honest. I've been watching this game for a while, and I'm very interested in this. We love, as we said, tactical. We love the Vietnam period. I'm very excited about this game. This was on we kind of do a top 10 list every year, and this was on my list for, I can't remember the number, but definitely my anticipation has been verified. This looks awesome. Can't wait to play it. Can't wait to play it.
I hope you enjoy it, and please let me know what you think.
Yeah, we will.
All right.
So, guys, we've had Joe Chacon with us here at WBC talking about Front Toward Enemy. Great name, by the way. I mean, amazing. Which is published by Multiman Publishing. So I've been Grant. Thank you very much. Thanks, Joe, for your time.
Thank you.
All right.